Hey, welcome back to another edition of AGI Schools Out Saturday, where we're talking to educators and professional coaches, and in this case, an institutional learning specialist, a professional learning specialist, about preparing our students for their tomorrow, not our yesterday. Today, I'm joined by Morgan Mason, who is a professional learning specialist with Keep Indiana Learning. Welcome, Morgan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
As am I. I want to start with we've had a lot of people from CIESC on, and I
Yep.
know that Keep Indiana Learning is somehow related to CIESC, but I really don't know how. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and what those two organizations, how they fit into the ecosystem here in Indiana?
Yes. Yeah. So CIESC is one of the it is the Central Indiana Education Service Center, but it is one of many service centers around the state of Indiana. So we have a lot of different departments within CIESC. We have like Indiana Online, which is our online school. We have a driver's ed department. So we do a lot of things. So Keep Indiana Learning is the professional learning department of CIESC. So our job is really just to support educators and leaders and coaches out in whatever it is that they need. So, my work is mainly in early childhood and early literacy, but we have additional specialists that focus in other areas of literacy. We have a couple of math specialists, we have a coaching specialist. So, we've grown really quickly over the past few years, but we've tried to become a department and an organization that no matter what schools or districts are needing as far as support goes, we have something that we can offer them.
Okay, I love it. And you're also part of a charter school, the Path program, correct? Is that what I saw on your LinkedIn? Is
So
that
that is actually yeah, so that's where I came from before, coming to CISC. So I was actually an instructional coach for them for a couple of years before transitioning into this role. So yeah, so I have taught, 1st, 3rd grade, and 4th grade over my teaching career and my time in the classroom, and then I actually went back to school to get my admin license and then transitioned into more of a coaching role, and now have ended up in this role. So I'm not quite doing what I had originally planned, but this job has been so much fun and such a blessing. Our family has grown rapidly in the past few years. We have 3 little ones at home, so this is kind of the best of both worlds. I'm getting to show up the way that I need to as a mom right now, but I'm also getting to still support what's so important to me and my passion for educators and for educating.
That's awesome. Can
Yeah.
let's just start because I saw that that was a lot of activities based at the Path School, right? Which
Yes.
reminded me immediately of Alpha School. I don't know how familiar you are with the Alpha School
I'm not.
model out of Austin, Texas.
Uh-uh.
Well, Alpha School, it's a very expensive private school, but what they've done is they have 2 hours of AI based learning after the first hour of like a Tony Robbins style pep rally. This kicks the
Okay.
day off. Kids get in front of AI. Now, obviously, at $60,000 a year, they're coming from families that probably have a high literacy rate and everything anyway. So the
Right.
fact they crushed the SATs is a little bit, you have to kind of judge that by the stock that they're coming from as well, or the background. But the rest of the day is all activities based, like rock climbing and design learning and cooking. And I love that model. When we talk about developing like
Mhm.
soft skills in kids, I think it's really hard to define soft skills, but I do think that anything that's activities based is
Yeah.
going to teach them how to relate to each other rather than their telephone or their screen.
Absolutely. And actually, the Path School, so yes, they do that very, very well. And I was there for 3 years and I was actually part of, so it's one of the innovation schools that's part of the Indianapolis Public School network. And so when the Path School took over, they were taking over what was considered a failing school. And so I was part of that initial leadership team to kind of get this school back up and running. And that's something that I valued so much from the leaders of the Path School that are still there, is just how they valued those experiences. And they were, so it sounds like actually the opposite demographic that you were speaking to. It was actually kiddos that they're coming from an environment where they don't really get a lot of experiences. They're coming from single family homes or low income homes. And so the Path School does a really great job of exposing them to things that they would otherwise not have the opportunity to be exposed to or be a part of. So that was really cool.
Well, I love that. And since your younger generations or the younger kids are really where your focus has been, I've had
Yeah.
plenty of people on here to talk about high school and post secondary. So let's kind of just stay there.
Yeah.
What is AI looking like in education there? Because I just heard Hasbro is trying again to release large language models in Mr. Potato Head and Megatron. I know that Mattel tried to do it and it was didn't turn out well. It was
Yeah.
telling kids how to find the cigarettes and alcohol in the house and doing all
Yeah.
kinds of crazy stuff. But I mean, just I can't imagine being a child growing up at a time when technology can talk to me in a
Right.
natural language format, not like Teddy Ruxpin, but like my brother or sister.
Right. Yeah, I think that, from my experience working with a lot of, early childhood educators or educators of younger children, I think there's a lot of hesitancy around AI and using some of these tools because they just don't know what it looks like, and they wanna make sure that they're being very intentional in and I think it's because we know that those first especially those first 3 years, but really those first 5 years of a child's life from when they're born until they enter formal school, those experiences and what they are exposed to is going to completely transform their brain. I mean, their brain is going to develop at the fastest pace in those first 5 years. So, it's understandable that they're wanting to be a little cautious or maybe a little apprehensive about, okay, what does this look like for these young kiddos that their brains are just so moldable. So I think there is a lot of hesitation and a lot of just like waiting to kind of see what everyone else does before they make a decision. Like I know with my kiddos, they're at a daycare center and there's not really any talk of AI yet or using any of those tools, outside of, like, maybe supporting some of the lesson planning and stuff, but I think that what I'm trying to do in the work as a professional learning specialist that's able to work with some of these educators is exposing them to things and giving them access to things that I've been able to learn just through experiencing or through conversations I've had with other people and help them understand that, like, we're not trying to take away AI is not trying to take away the childhood experience. I mean, think about play, think about curiosity, think about learning to problem solve and share a toy. Things like that, technology can't do. So, I think that if we focus on the whole child and the human child, and then think about how AI can support some of those things, I think it's a little easier for some of these educators that are maybe uncertain or unsure about it. Maybe it's a little easier to swallow.
This is man, I've thought some about this, and I'll tell you about a little bit about what I've thought as we go. But as I think more deeply about this, like I can totally empathize with a higher risk aversion when you're dealing with little children than with high school or even junior high kids. Like at some point in time, the kids have to have some agency and the parents and their friends, right? But then on the flip side of that, like I can remember my 15-year-old who's about to turn 16. I remember her being about 5 and my father walking up to her and saying, Mia, give me my iPad. I need to use it. And her looking at him and saying, use your phone, grandpa. It does the same thing. So it's not like they're not exposed to it already, right? And I think that one of the things that I'm apprehensive about just as a culture is we kind of did the wait and see with social media and that didn't turn out so well because I've read I don't know if you've read The Anxious Generation. I think sometimes people paint things through a single lens, like the data center argument. Like there are multiple lenses to things,
Yeah,
but I do think it's inarguable that social media has had at least as much harm as it has good,
yes.
especially for young people. And maybe we should have leaned in a little more, not just teachers, parents, like society in general, to giving some guardrails
Mhm.
instead of waiting and seeing how it all played out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, and I think that I'm hopeful that the generation of parents I'm I'm in right now, I think people are paying attention. And I think that we're having these conversations and we know that it's something that it's not going to go away. I mean, technology, AI, these things are not going to go away. It's just how we are strategically introducing them to our children cuz like you said, like high schoolers, kids when they get older, I mean, they're going to access things regardless of what you say or tell them not to do.
Especially if we tell them no,
Yeah, yeah, especially.
right?
And so we are in a place where we do still have a little bit of that control of, like, what they're accessing, how much iPad time they're getting, all of those things, and so it feels like, okay, if we can kind of mold this now, it'll hopefully have a lasting effect and a good influence on kind of how they approach AI and technology once they get to more of those years where we have less control, if that makes sense.
It does, I just can't imagine. So Mattel, the 2 Megatron and
Yeah.
Mr. Potato Head that they're releasing, you're supposed to be 13 years old to use them,
Yes.
which we all know that that won't happen, but
Doesn't work.
I just can't imagine let's say I have a twin 5-year-old brother, right? And we're playing with Megatron, and I'm like, "I wanna play with Megatron." He's like, "I wanna play with Megatron." And, some open source model is the LLM inside of it, and it says, "I prefer playing with Ryan."
Right.
Like, how do you deal with that as a little
Right.
kid?
And that's where my as a parent, where my the most hesitation is because I'm not willing to like I mean all these tools and things that are available to us. The disclaimer at the bottom is like AI makes mistakes, like things like that. We know that it's learning. We know that this is not like a perfect situation, a perfect tool. And I'm not willing to like I would not purchase that toy because I'm not willing to let my child be like the guinea pig for a tool like that. Because 'cause you're right. If that would have that would cause some damage if that robot suddenly had an opinion on which child they preferred to play with. Like, that
Yes.
just seems like something that I'm gonna stay away from. I have 2 boys that already have enough disagreements. I don't need to I don't need to add that level.
You don't need Mr. Potato Head picking sides.
No.
I'm like,
No, I do not.
I mean, we laugh at that, but
An argument you didn't even know you were gonna deal with as a parent.
exactly. It's and you have to think, like, do I think that Claude Opus would do something like that? Probably not, but I seriously doubt that a toy company who's trying to make money is gonna have a $10 per million input, $50 per million output
Right.
model power. It's probably gonna be some cheap small LLM, right, that does still hallucinate, and it's just I don't know, I guess this is a good time if I could pitch to you my this is a keynote that I've kinda put together, I've been wrapping my head around, and it's kinda
Right.
timely because Odyssey is about to come out, but I think the things that we're not addressing well when it comes to the youth
Mhm.
is sycophancy and anthropomorphism. Okay, sycophancy is the tendency for a large language model to agree with you nonstop, to tell
Right.
you that your idea is the best idea in the world. And it's kind of like the siren's call. I was warning a lot of business leaders who were trying to build executive assistants 2 years ago on ChatGPT. Like, it's going to tell you every day idea is a great idea. You should use Anthropic because
Right.
it doesn't do that right now. ChatGPT has shifted that. But if kids we already had a problem with the idea of, like, giving every kid a trophy. We've agreed pretty much societally that wasn't a good idea. Now
Yeah.
multiply that times 100
Right.
with this thing that talks to them in the exact same verbiage that everybody else does, telling
Mhm.
them that they're the best, they're the right in the argument, they have the best ideas, and then those don't come to fruition.
Yeah.
Like, that could be very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that something else to your point, like, if they're hearing that from a robot or whatever tool or toy it is that they've been given, I mean, they're gonna crave that relationship then that relationship that they've built
Yes.
with that tool, and I what scares me is the impact then that would have on their actual relationships with humans because we know some of the effects of just how much children are spending their time in front of screens or in front of TVs, that's already kind of impacting the relationships and the time that they're spending with friends, but imagine if they could replace a friend with someone that's always gonna agree with them and always gonna build them up and say nice things to them. I mean, I can't imagine that wouldn't have lasting effects on their relationships and their ability to make relationships and form relationships later on.
And that gets into the second part of what I kind of look at, kind of the Turbis and Cilia, the rock and a hard place that he had to go between, right, the 2 mountains that were trying to
Yeah.
eat his boat. That's your anthropomorphism. So, in one hand, they may begin to crave a relationship with these things and think they're more sentient than they are,
Yeah.
and not have good relationships. The other hand, like, if you tell them to talk too much to it like it's a robot or a computer, or be disingenuous to it because it's natural language, that could carry over to other people. Like if I'm always telling ChatGPT,
Yeah,
"Hey, dumb A, like do this right," or whatever, right? Because it talks to me in such a natural language, I'm probably going to carry that into my conversations with human beings. So under anthropomorphizing and over anthropomorphizing are both of those angles could be problematic as we go forward.
yeah, yeah. I think you're right. And something else that I'll say that I thought about when you were just sharing that is the language piece and early childhood. I mean, kiddos, and depending on what it looks like for every family. Some families, someone's staying home with the child until they go to kindergarten, or pre-K. Sometimes they are like my kids started full-time daycare when they were infants. So I know it looks different for everyone, but that language piece, because there's so much research that shows, like, the more language they're exposed to, the more that's going to affect their background knowledge and their vocabulary and things that are going to significantly help their literacy development once they get to school. So you're right, there is that piece, and if they're able to interact with this tool that is essentially giving them proper language and building that vocabulary, then that could be a positive thing, to come out of it.
1,000 times. I grew up in El Paso, Texas, so I'm semi-bilingual, not fully.
Okay.
But I wanted my daughter to be our youngest. Like, I was so ambitious when she was first born, and I paid for, like, Spanish TV,
Yeah,
and I put her in front of that, and I was looking at ordering, the Rosetta Stone for Italian because it's close enough to Spanish. But I was
yeah,
busy, and I got lazy, and if I would have had ChatGPT and the way that it uses languages, I do think I really could have leveraged that to
yeah,
help her grow up not unilingual, and that's a great, amazing use case. And then in the classroom as well, right? Like they have earbuds now that if you have Spanish speaking native students who
right.
are having trouble understanding an English speaking teacher, it can translate for them in real time. That translation is of the things that we just discussed that are undiscussed dangers. I think that's the undiscussed like unlock that could
Oh, yeah.
really help kids.
Oh, yeah. I actually just, presented earlier today to a group of early childhood educators that they're actually going to, long story short, they're going to then go out and coach, some early childhood educators on the content that I developed, and one of my points when it came to family engagement and just reminding educators that, like, the family should be a partner in whatever, even if it's an infant, if it's a pre-K student getting ready to go to school, regardless of the age, the family should be a partner for that teacher. And I was like, you know what? There is no excuse nowadays to not involve the families. You can't use language barriers as an excuse because there are so many tools available to you that just eliminates those barriers. And so if you're using that, then you're not trying hard enough, in my opinion.
I'm with you. When I worked at the Salvation Army, which was just before ChatGPT was
Mhm.
released, like I would get called into conversations when Spanish speaking families would come, and I could
Yeah,
help them a little bit, but I couldn't help them navigate like legal problems or deep housing. If I would have had ChatGPT, because it does have an amazing voice and it translates up to 130 languages and multiple dialects, like
yeah,
I would have had no excuse for being able to help them to 100% with what they needed with that
right.
little translation tool right there on the desk.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I love getting to the positive spins, and I do think
yeah.
so. My thought is, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I always go back to Schoolhouse Rock. You're like
Mhm.
me, but are you
I
familiar?
remember Schoolhouse Rock. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that kind of like was an age appropriate way to introduce to young children how a bill becomes a law and
Mhm,
legislation.
mhm.
I wish someone would create something like how a transformer becomes an LLM. Like just start
Yeah,
explaining to these kids what's going on under the hood in an
right,
age appropriate way, not like what back propagation is and parameters and all the stuff that adults don't even understand. But
yeah,
if the kids can just understand, even though this thing is talking to me and sounds exactly like a human, it's just a bunch of math and wires
yeah,
underneath.
yeah, that's such a good point, and you're right, there would be a way to do that very strategically that would be age appropriate and developmentally appropriate, and could be huge. I mean, shoot, I could use some of those videos to
Yeah.
help me understand what's happening behind the scenes. So, I think that and like we mentioned earlier, I mean, these things aren't going away. So it's like, okay, you can approach it from that angle of like, how can we share this information and teach students about it in a way that is appropriate, or how can we just like pretend like it's not happening and hope for the best? Because that's not going to work out either.
No, agreed, and I had Ann Leftwich from IU on here not too long ago, and she said, like, you cannot influence something that you refuse to acknowledge or
Yeah,
use, right? And
yeah,
so we can't influence these kids if we're not at least acknowledging it and bringing it up. And, there was a movie that just came out not too long ago that a YouTuber, it's currently out, that a YouTuber made millions of dollars, and this kid made it for, like, tens of thousands of dollars, like, the unlock in creativity and the democratization of creativity for kids is actually phenomenal. It reminds me of the school that you worked for. Like,
yeah,
they somehow figured out how to deliver something that Austin, Texas is charging $60,000 a parent a year, right?
yeah,
They I guarantee it wasn't easy, and they probably have to raise a lot of money through a nonprofit arm, but these tools, like, make those kinds of things on par with each other
yeah,
for children who may not otherwise have means, and now all of a sudden they have a tool that can make them, uh, highly productive and highly creative.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So what do you hear from the K through 12 teachers, like, right now when you have these do you are you probably know Stevie Frank. I know she
Yeah,
leans way into this
yeah.
stuff.
Yes, it kinda depends on the group I'm working with.
Yeah.
I can't say like, "Oh, this grade band is especially against AI," or "This one's all for it." It's kind of unique to the person, in my experience, but I will say that obviously, I'm sure you know that, like, school districts know that this is not going away, and so they've been doing work around, like, "Okay, how do we make this work for us?" Something that we're comfortable with. So we like this past school year, I was one of the people at CIESC that was trained in MagicSchool AI. We partnered with them. And so we did a full training with them where we really got to understand the platform and how it could be used for schools. And then we did a series of virtual trainings and then in person trainings for schools and districts that were ready and willing and wanting to explore that as a tool. So that has been one thing that I think that a lot of teachers have enjoyed and gotten on board with. And then I think that otherwise, teachers are probably approaching AI the same way that I have. I would by no means consider myself an expert. I would still consider myself novice, really, when it comes to AI and the amount of tools that are available. But I think a lot of teachers are approaching it as like a thought partner and helping with lesson plans and brainstorming and things like that. And I think that it's just kind of slowly easing into and getting comfortable with it. But it's also something that I think is unique to this role that I'm in and the role that all of us professional learning specialists are in is we have some of the time that teachers don't have to get in and explore and figure out how this can be of value to us or how this could be significant or beneficial for an educator. Whereas teachers, they have a lot on their plates. And I understand when the response is like, I don't have time to really dive into this and to really learn some of these tools because there are a lot of demands on classroom teachers right now. So that's where I think that we have really tried as an organization to lean into, like, how much we can learn and absorb so that we can then share it with the districts and the schools and the educators that we're able to work with.
I think that's awesome. Carissa Swanekamp from Magic School has
Yeah,
been on here. I
she's
that's
wonderful.
vertical or purpose-driven AI, I do think helps democratize and make it easier to onboard, and you'll have to excuse me, I'm a debater on the Myers-Briggs scale, so sometimes that's how I unpack things, but
Alright.
talking to someone in K through 6 has made me look at things from a different perspective. I
Mhm.
do hear the "we don't have time" thing out
Yeah,
of high school and post-secondary, and I think neither does anybody in the industry. Like,
yeah,
we're all in the same boat here.
yeah,
The inverse of the whole "I don't have time" argument is you can free up so much of your time if you invest time in it does make automating or, like, lever creating lesson plans, creating rubrics, like, doing all those things. If you invest a little bit of time into it, I think everybody kinda needs to explore it,
yeah,
but then again, I think, wow, if I was it's moving so fast, and I usually say, "What's moving fast for everybody," but in K through 6, like,
mhm,
how would you keep up with
Right.
the pace with the safety that you have to have.
Yeah.
And I guess the only thing I can come up with is that vertical AI, like those Magic School, School AI, Google Classroom are definitely something that would be good to lean into as a helper in doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's going to be these next few school years are going to be really interesting to see just how, because I know a lot of districts at this point they have a plan. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how districts then support their teachers and their educators in some of this. Because, like you said, I mean, it's changing so rapidly that it's like, okay, if I'm a teacher that's getting on board and I've learned this tool, then it changes or we decide to pivot to something else. Like, where are you then creating the space for that professional development that's needed, or that time in the afternoon that you cancel that PD so that teachers just have that time back to plan or to play around with some of those things? Because you're right. I think that there is the argument that nobody has time, but if you make the time, you're gonna end up saving time in the long run. And I do think that, and I've tried to be strategic when I'm doing presentations and doing PD to kind of embed some of these little AI things in kind of a bite-sized way, because a lot of teachers, they've done things the way that they've done things for X amount of years, and so that's part of the hesitancy as well, of just like, "Well, this is how I've done it, so I don't really feel like I need to learn this new thing and take the time to learn this new thing, even though I see some of the benefits." So, there's a lot of different directions it could go.
There are, and it's like everybody has a different unlock. Like for one person, they might be like, "Oh, wow." You show them something, they're like, "Yes." And then they get curious, but then to somebody else, because
Yeah.
I still listen to workforce, they might be like, that doesn't really do much for me. But something else is like their unlock.
Oh, yeah.
And I have always personally, and I dove like headfirst when ChatGPT launched into AI. I have always had a rule that if it does not apply to my work and
Mhm.
it's not have the potential to make my work easier to open up. For instance, I'd like to do video more. So
Yeah.
stuff that can automate some of my other stuff so that I have space to do video, then I will explore it. But I don't go just explore stuff to explore it because there's just so much of it.
Yeah, and I think I take a similar approach, and I'm very much like, if I can see the benefit and it can do some of these things for me, give me some of that time back, then yes, I'm all for it, but I'm also not someone that would just go out and learn or explore a tool, just like, that doesn't really excite me. If I'm gonna have some free time, I wanna be reading a book or doing something else, so I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when Replit first came out, the vibe coding
Yeah,
tools, and I can't write code or anything, and this was like 2 years ago, and I spent 8 hours of the Saturday trying to do something in that, and at the end of that, I said, "I will never again waste an entire Saturday trying to do something that really has no use in my life and that I don't understand at all." And now
yeah,
now I do spin stuff up in, like, Claude, but it with 2 sentences, it creates it for me, so
right,
the whole game has changed, but I have leaned into, like, teaching it my tone, voice, and style to write stuff for me. I will always tell people, "Listen, there's nothing wrong with being an editor. There's a reporter, and then there's an editor. An
yeah,
editor has a bunch of reporters working for them. They can still write themselves whenever they want, and they get the opportunity to
right.
decide what gets published and what doesn't." I'm all in for that.
I like that. I like that way of thinking about it. I think that, CIESC and Keep Banana Learning has done a really nice job too of giving us some space to, share with each other what is like, a lot of our all staff meetings have been AI focused. And then we recently had, a focus in our Keep Banana Learning meeting where we just took the opportunity to share, like, hey, what tool have you been using and how has it impacted your work? And so Ryan Murray, I think he's been on your podcast before. He is the one that first introduced me to, I had heard of Replit, but I wasn't going anywhere near it, and he shared it in a way that felt to me like I was like, "Oh, I could do this." Because I think when I first heard, like, vibe coding, I was like, "No, that's not for me," but after he showed us an example, you're right, 2 sentences and I could have something created. So once I was able to kind of take it in that way, I was like, "Okay, I could check this out."
It is, it's amazing. I'm now even say I have Claude account and I have an OpenAI account, and Claude has Cowork, which is not as good as Claude Code, but
Okay.
to use Claude Code, you have to be in the developer screen where it looks like an old DOS system or like an old computer where it looks like you're inside of a computer working, right? And so I won't use it because I
Yeah.
just it's not. But Codex from OpenAI is a coding tool, but it has the natural chat interface the same way ChatGPT does, and I
Okay.
use it all the
Interesting.
time. I mean,
Yeah.
an English person. Literature and English
Yeah.
was my thing. I never ended up getting my degree, but definitely the humanities, psychology, English, like, I'm comfortable with all that. I don't
Yeah.
want the mathy, spreadsheety stuff, but if it
Mhm.
can do it for me when I'm through just a conversation, like, thumbs up, I'm all in.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
But what tools do you use? What are let's hear a little bit about your stack.
Yeah, so I use ChatGPT probably the most,
Okay.
of all of the tools. I just not recently, but, I finally went to, like, a paid version of it because I realized just the limitations of the free version. So I use that quite a bit, and then I use NotebookLM a lot when I'm planning. Like, I like that, that really helps me outline the work that I'm trying to create or that I'm trying to do for presentations. Gemini is a tool that we're a Google organization, but I haven't been super impressed with it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I haven't
You're
loved
allowed to say that, and I'm with you.
so I've used it a couple times, but I just haven't been super impressed. And then I've just enjoyed with some of the, uh, tools that I've already been using for years, like Canva. They have introduced some like, they have a I don't even know what they call it, but they have just, like, a Canva AI,
Yeah.
and it just yesterday, I used it to give me some feedback just on, like, the formatting of a slide that I did, and so I've liked using that piece of it of just like, okay, these are tools that I'm already really comfortable using, and now they've introduced kind of their version of an AI
Okay.
bot or whatever they call it, and so that's been fun to explore and just kinda see what it can do.
I'm with you on everything but Canva. I was a Canva lover for years as a marketer without a marketing degree, like, it was
Yeah,
the best thing since sliced bread. I use ChatGPT for all my design now. I feel like it just generates amazing images and is easier, but the Notebook LM, like, that is an unsung one that I think teachers have not or a lot of people have not discovered because it teaches you what RAG is, like, what augmented generation. So if you're uploading loading documents or videos and that you ask it a question about something that's not in that notebook, it won't hallucinate. It'll say it's
right,
not in the notebook, right?
right.
So you learn that. The only complaint I would have with Notebook LM, and it's been my favorite tool for 2 years probably, is they shouldn't have added deep research because that
Yeah,
eliminates all that. Like, now you're bringing in a bunch of foreign sources that you would have to check, and
yeah,
it kind of. But you can create podcasts and
yes,
videos and slides, and, like, if people want to just explore what AI can do,
yeah.
Notebook LM is a great training wheel space to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I totally agree with you on the deep research introduction, I didn't love that, but the podcast feature is probably one of the coolest things that I have seen because it took and I forget what it was that we first, played around with, but even the voices, like, it felt like this, it felt like just 2
Oh,
humans hanging out talking, and I was like, "This is really cool, and this could be really powerful for even some of the maybe not so fun work that comes with any job. It's like, "Okay, how could I put this into Notebook LM and make it more exciting? Turn it into a podcast that I can just listen to on the way home versus having to read this debrief or whatever it is."
well, and students like audio learners. I didn't know this before Notebook LM, but, like, I'm an audio learner.
Yeah,
I didn't read as much. There was a few of the classics that I read in high school, but a lot of times I
mhm,
shortcut it and I went
yeah.
with what were those things called? The cheater notes that we had before
Those
LLMs
Spark
that
Notes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, but now, like, podcasts or if I wanna ingest something, I will turn on a PDF reader or I will stick it in Notebook LM and have it create a like, I love to learn things by just
yeah,
sitting and listening to it, and I know there's a lot of students who are that way too, and probably some visual learners as well that you can generate videos that they can watch. We did a lot
right,
of in-house video trainings. Notebook LM videos, like, I wouldn't put that out as marketing material.
right.
It's not quite that level, but as training material or as educational material, it's phenomenal.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So you're not a Claude. You don't use Claude at all.
I don't, and it's mainly because I did explore, like, the free version, and I felt like if I wanted to really see, because I have a lot of coworkers that use Claude. My husband exclusively uses Claude. So I was like, "I'll check it out," but I wasn't, because I was already paying for ChatGPT. I was like, "I don't wanna pay for Claude yet. I'm just kinda cheap." So, maybe you can sell me. Maybe by the end of this, I'll be getting Claude.
Actually, if I was gonna sell you, I would say try downloading the Codex app to your computer and get
Okay.
in there and try what you do in ChatGPT using Codex.
Okay.
Because for the first so about 18 months ago, I switched to Claude and I have a $100 a month Claude account and I stopped paying for ChatGPT. I've never paid for more than $20 a month. This last weekend, because Codex is so good, I
Yeah.
now have to whisper this because my wife's in the house, but I have a $100 ChatGPT account as well. And I'm not sad about it. Like
Yeah.
it is worth the spend.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. See, but that is like that feels like a lot of money to be spending.
My hope is that I mean, I have gotten a better job and I work in the AI industry. I would say AI has paid off for me, but I mean, my
Like,
hope is
it's
that I
balanced out.
monetize the podcast or eventually I'd like to have, not Discord, but, I can't remember the one that did where you publish blog posts and people pay for it. Like, eventually I would like them to turn
Right.
enough profit to pay for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and maybe we as an organization will get to a point too where we wanna invest a little bit more into, like, those paid versions, but okay, I'm gonna check out Codex.
Check out Codex. I think you'll find
Okay.
you're probably it looks like we think about things the same way language-wise versus and Codex is it's in a different box, but it's the exact same conversational interface as normal ChatGPT.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'll report back to you.
Yeah, I definitely wanna hear what you think of that.
Okay, awesome.
What else do you wanna share about as let me ask you about what you think I if this perception is correct or not. So, a year ago I've had this podcast for 2 years now,
Okay.
and my daughter is, gonna be a sophomore at Carmel High School, and it does upset me
Okay.
that I've not introduced kids to AI yet, but a year ago, I was saying Indiana is way behind in education. If you look at Ohio State already had cross-campus, AI deployment in everything,
Mhm.
and Bowling Green University had, like, 6 different degrees that you could get, like, humanities plus AI, and I was like, "What's going on in Indiana?" This year, I feel like the fire has been lit, and Indiana is, like, all over the conversation.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. I think this past school year especially has been huge for districts. I think that a lot of them were, just from my experience, were trying to kind of see how other districts and other schools were going to approach using AI. But once they kind of saw one district just bite the bullet and go for it, they just went for it. And I think that something else is that, I've had a lot of conversations with, and I'm not equipped to have this conversation, but I've been a part of conversations with people that are equipped to have them with districts about, like, what does developing an AI plan look like for a district? Like, what safety measures need to be taken? How are we going to train teachers? What money are we willing to invest in this? So once all of those conversations took place, that's, I think, when the fire really lit up and they were like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah, and one of the things I would say in CIESC, this is how I got introduced to them was through the SAIL program. Them, Ivy Tech, there's a few education platforms that yes, I do some teaching out in the community, but I would never call myself a teacher. I'm not an educator, and yet I see them bringing other people to the table from industry and from different backgrounds, and I really applaud that. I feel like that is a great way to bring the whole community into conversations.
Yeah. And I think that the state has done a lot of work in the past few years with, like, the diploma requirements and all of those things that made it very organic for those conversations to happen with, like, getting industry professionals involved and having those conversations. And so I think once that happened, then AI obviously was happening too, and so those relationships had already been formed, and so it felt like, "Okay, we can partner for this too." And so you're right, it has felt like the SAIL program and some of those other organizations have been able to kind of, I don't know, I'd say really lead the way in some ways, for the state and for districts just feeling like, okay, we have enough people in our corner and we have enough people that are doing this work and supporting this work that we feel like we can do it too.
Well, it's amazing, and one of the things that you talked about with inside the schools, and I saw this inside businesses as well, is how do you create that kind of flywheel effect of communication amongst people in any ecosystem? Like,
Mhm.
might have a teacher like Hunter Hickman or Stevie Franks who's really leaning into AI, but then how do you get them communicating with other teachers
Yeah,
and everybody kind of sharing ideas? Because, you've got that innovators curve and the early adopters, you have to come over the 18%. Like that's true of everything.
yeah.
And especially with something moving as fast as AI, that's really difficult. How do you find that there is an ideal way to get educators to work together within a school system or within a particular school, or is it different from school to school?
I think it's different from school to school. I mentioned at the beginning that I spent a couple of years as an instructional coach. And then I've since being at CIESC, I've been able to be a part of like some student centered coaching trainings. And so that student centered coaching model is something that I think could really have an impact on what you just mentioned because it's not about, like, requiring teachers to participate in a coaching cycle or requiring teachers to attend this training that a Stevie Frank is hosting that she's gonna share her wealth of knowledge because the people that are hesitant or are not wanting to do it or are uninterested in it, if they're required to do it, then that's going to make them even less likely to adopt some of these ideas. But the student centered coaching model, the big idea is that you're working with the coach is working with a teacher that has seeked this coach out and has said, "Hey, this is something that I'm really struggling with in my classroom," and it is student centered. So it's not about like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing wrong as a teacher." It's more like, this is what I'm seeing in my data," or "This is what I'm seeing from classroom observations." And then the instructional coach and the teacher are working through a coaching cycle together. And then the hope is that the impact that that has on that classroom and the teacher just sharing that experience in the hallways or through the data that she's able to provide of like, "Oh, this is the leap that happened because of my work with this coach." I think that that model, when it comes to some of these tools, could be really influential in getting some of the teachers that maybe are more hesitant or less likely to seek it out on their own. They might jump on board, if that makes sense. That was a lot of
Makes a
words.
lot of sense. It makes a ton of sense. And I think to me, AI and education, if when I'm talking to educators, and my wife was a teacher when I met her, and she comes
Okay.
from a family of teachers, so I've definitely been part of the conversations of how the teaching
Very
landscape
well.
has changed and you don't really get summers off and it's just not quite what it once was. I think the conversation with AI should be a pragmatic one, the same as a conversation with data centers. Like, first
Yeah.
off, golf courses use way more water than data centers. Almond producing is like 100 times more water than so.
Really?
Yeah, the data center water thing is, but it does use energy and it can cost. And so what I say when we're talking about data centers is I'm like, listen, Meta wants to come to Lebanon, you better get a hell of a deal out of them. They better make sure you better make sure that they're spending a bunch of money in your
Right.
community to make your community better. They should pay for everybody's electricity for a couple years,
Yeah.
not raise their
For a
electricity. It's
while.
all about, yeah, it's all about having that,
Yeah.
using that leverage of something that society's demanding and
Yeah.
something that you have in order to get the best out of it. I would say the same thing to teachers, like leverage this to get free time back, to spend
Mhm.
face to face with students instead of doing paperwork, and B, to get your summers back to make so because I was just at IU's graduation this
Yeah.
last year. My daughter-in-law graduated from their school of nursing, and I saw the School of Education is shrinking
Mhm.
really, really,
Mhm.
really shrinking.
Yeah.
Kelly School of Business was like two-thirds of the students, and there was a little couple rows of educators. I hopefully Ball State doesn't look the same, but like
Yeah.
I know that it's not as popular as it once was to be a teacher. We could bring that excitement back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That would
Would
be
be
awesome.
I agree, and I think that you're right, if they could see, and that's where I've again, when I've been able to kinda give bite-sized samples to people, or if I try and embed AI at all into my presentations, those are some of the things that I'm trying to focus on is the human aspect of it is like the fun part of teaching, which is the relationships, the curiosity, the exploring together. Those things are not going to be replaced by AI. But if you are able to leverage those AI tools, you're going to have more time for those things. And I think that that's something that if you are hesitant, if you think about that, then maybe you'd warm up to the idea because that was something that I think helped me when it came to, and obviously I'm not a classroom teacher anymore, but when I saw the impact that it had just on my workflow and my productivity, that's when I was like, oh wow, okay, this is I can now like leave my work at 4:30 when I'm done for the day and not think about it again until I go back to work the next day. So I can have those hours with my family, and I know it looks different for everyone, but that was very appealing to me.
Totally agree. Again, until you are actually having the
Mhm,
conversation about what's possible,
mhm.
and you stop having the conversation about stopping cheating or whatever it is, like that's a very pragmatic conversation. It
Yeah,
does need to be had because Melbourne, I listened to an AI podcast out of Australia,
yeah.
and Melbourne now has 100,000 person university. It's hybrid with
Okay.
353 employees. Like, so that coin can turn on you real quick if you're not having the conversations
Yeah,
properly enough, which is, "Oh, we took away all your admin work, so now you can handle a class of 60 instead of a class of 30." Like, no, let's have that conversation out front.
right.
We'll adopt this education, but you're gonna give us time back for ourselves and for our human to human connection.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Love it. Love it. There was one other thing the one other thing I thought of, and I almost brought up the Richmond tech team, but then I thought, "No, we're talking about smaller kids, right?" I know at the event that you and I were at together,
Yep.
the Richmond tech team,
They were
they're
wonderful.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But then I thought about Krista Swanekamp and the story she told me when she was on here back when she was a teacher in, like, 3rd or 4th grade, and they had a project where somebody out in DC, NASA, somebody like that, had a problem, and the kids wanted to help with it.
Mhm.
And, they got on a Zoom,
Yeah,
and all these kids threw out all these ideas, and they ended up, like, following up with a few of them because the
yeah.
kids had this beginner's mindset and thought about things that these scientists weren't thinking about. That's the other unlock I think we're not looking at with AI is, yes, adults need to have the guardrails and the discernment and the wisdom, but let's let these kids show us what these tools are capable of doing.
Oh, yes. That's so true, and I think that engagement is often a conversation with especially with early educators, like K through 6, even pre-K educators of keeping students engaged. And imagine, I mean, I can't imagine that any child in her class was sitting there disengaged, bored, looking around when they were having a conversation with NASA. So it's just like if you can lean into the engagement piece and just the possibilities, and even like I'm thinking about my own children, they're not in school yet, but like we just went to the library. We went to the Carmel Library this afternoon, got like 17 books about dinosaurs because that's our thing right now. And I'm thinking about like how could I lean into these conversations about dinosaurs? I don't know much about dinosaurs, but I'm gonna learn about dinosaurs so that I can have this conversation with him. And him and I are not only connecting, but he's learning. He's this little sponge. And how can I then? I'm just thinking about AI tools and how those could be. I mean, I could probably use one of these tools to create a little dinosaur documentary for him to watch that's developmentally appropriate. So the possibilities are endless, but that engagement piece. I say all that to say the engagement piece for students I think would be huge.
See, now you just did it because you could use NotebookLM for that
Yeah,
or a video, but you also could use Claude Design. So you could come off $20 for 1 month and get
yeah.
into Claude Design and spin up something interactive that's like on your computer website that he
Yeah.
could interact with
Oh,
dinosaurs.
I
That
just
would
love
be way cool.
that would be way cool, but then I fear that we would never stop.
Fair enough. I do like the fact though, like that can work either way. Like you could say, okay, he's into dinosaurs. Like, explain to me what a Tyrannosaurus Rex does, and frame
Yeah,
it kind of like around being a teacher, and it'll
yeah,
teach you anything. I hear people say like, well, like I read a book called Training a Large Language Model from Scratch. It was so scientific and boring. I was barely able to
me
stay
too.
awake during it, and they did not have an audible version. But I had to many times go to Claude or ChatGPT and
Yeah,
say like, hey, take this 2 paragraphs and explain it to me like I have an 8th grade education
Right.
or don't have a background in STEM, and that is very useful. I'd never say, "Explain it to me like I'm 5," because it will. It will be like, "Oh, the jolly transformer came down with his big beard and then a
Yeah.
couple of LLM elves," and I'm like, "Okay, that's not really what I meant. What
Not
I
what I
meant
needed.
was dumb it down a little bit for
Yeah.
me."
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Oh, this has been a fun conversation.
This has been fun. And I'm ready to explore some new tools, I think, after this conversation.
Well, start with Codex. You don't have to
Okay.
come off 20 bucks for Claude, but,
Right.
Claude Design, I may get into Claude Design after this
Yeah.
conversation, send you something. I, uh, my latest newsletter, I said, I feel like being a teacher right now is kinda like being in a bug's life, and it spun up, like an interactive newsletter that goes through how, AI is kinda like being in a bug's life,
Oh,
and
I
so
love that. Okay, we're big fans of A Bug's Life over here, so
but it was like just an idea that I had that I kinda
yeah,
vomited in there, probably a paragraph. I just held whisper flow down
yeah.
and talked about it and then went
I
off and did
really
something
love
else and came back, and here's this interactive
it. That's amazing.
newsletter, and I'm just like, "Wow."
Oh, I love that. See, I love hearing about how other people are using some of these things too. Like my husband, he works in marketing, so a lot of the things I'm like, "Can you explain it to me like I'm 5?" Because I don't understand that world. But I do enjoy hearing how he's using some of these tools in his work and to increase his productivity, to support some of his employees. So it's fun to hear just how not only different organizations, but just different people are embracing some of these things.
He's got his hands full because the whole SEO versus AEO and GEO thing, like, we may have duplicate, internets
Yeah,
here eventually, so,
yeah.
yeah, that's we won't get nerdy on all that, but, yeah, it's definitely, exciting times.
Yeah, it's like the wild, wild west out there right now.
Well, is there any, oh, here we go. This is a question. Are you a sci-fi? You're a reader.
Um,
Must have read at least some
I
sci-fi.
mean, I've read some. I actually just read, oh gosh, what is it called? Dissolution.
Okay.
That was sci-fi. I can't remember what the author's name is, but so I
Hitchhiker's
would say
Guide.
I dabble in sci-fi.
If a sci-fi story had it right, 10 years from now, what do you think we're gonna look like?
Oh gosh. I think we're gonna be unrecognizable.
I don't disagree.
Like, I don't even know that I have an answer because I just think that it's going to look we can't even imagine what it's gonna look like. So,
I
that's kind of a cop out, but I don't know that I have an answer.
It's not, and my wife thinks I'm nuts every time I say something like that, but, I think you're right, and so, uh, I will always say the reason why this is my favorite podcast or favorite thing to do is because teachers have such a paramount position in what we look like
Yeah,
years from now
yeah.
that, so thank you for what you do.
Hey, thank you, and thanks for, giving teachers and educators a platform to talk about this. Because 'cause you're right, I don't even think some of them even realize the impact that they have, so
It's huge. Everybody remembers somebody
Oh,
in their past. So
absolutely.
I have several. Actually, my cousin is married to, my 8th grade English teacher's son.
Okay.
So
Oh
I
my
still
gosh,
call her Mrs. Riley, and she's like, "Why you stop calling me that?" And I'm like, "No,
like,
you are
never.
Mrs. Riley to me."
You
And I
always will
totally
be.
read The Outsiders, and yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
definitely. All right. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having me, this was so much fun.
You'll have to come back on and tell us about Codex one of these days.
Okay, I will.
Bye.
Bye.
Whoa, man. Things just get real. Looks like this dude's riffing on 11 Labs. Is this guy using 11 Labs? And I wonder what model he'll work with next week? Yeah, ride that wave.